Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Mrs. Archana Patki, Vice Principal, MMP Shah College, Matunga, Mumbai. Today we are going to talk about resilience and coping. Some of the learning objectives are to understand the meaning of resilience, to comprehend the various dimensions of resilience, to review the historical development of the construct of resilience, to acquaint ourselves with the cultural context of resilience, to analyze the various models of resilience as a theoretical basis of resilience, to enlist the different protective factors of resilience, to discuss whether resilience can be fostered, to review some interesting studies in the field of resilience. In the depth of winter, I finally learned within me lay an invincible summer. These words of Albert Camus best describe resilience. Meena had financial problems, yet completed higher education. Deepak was physically challenged and found locomotion difficult, yet he travelled long distances and became a successful businessman. These and others are some common examples of ordinary people demonstrating resilience. Hence, it is also called the ordinary magic. We have heard of some famous people who have displayed resilience. It is a well-known fact that Lal Bahadur Shastri did not have a school in his village, so he had to swim to the neighbouring village to attend school. Since his family was poor, he had only one shirt, so he had to leave home early so that he could dry his shirt before school began. He rose to be the Prime Minister of our country. In recent years, Yuvraj Singh battled the dreaded disease of cancer and got back into Indian cricket team. All the above instances show people rising above their circumstances and emerging successful. So, people who overcome tragedy, threat and difficulties are said to display resilience. So, then what is resilience really? If we look at the meaning of resilience, basically a pliant or elastic quality of a substance. The word resilience has originated from the Latin word resilience. The concept has come from the science of physics and it is based on the principle of flexibility and the molding nature of matter. So, resilience basically refers to the adaptability and flexibility of human nature. It is the individual's tendency to cope with stress and adversity. Some examples of the sources of stress are family disharmony, incompatible relationships, severe illness, workplace bullying, financial failures and the like. The Webster's 20th Century Dictionary refers to resilience as the ability to bounce or spring back after being stretched or constrained, or recovering strength or spirit. If a person is adapting well in spite of trauma, tragedy or threat, he is considered to be a resilient person. According to Maston, resilience refers to a class of phenomena characterized by good outcomes in spite of threats to adaptation or development. So, a resilient person not only recovers from difficulty and distress, but also maintains psychological equilibrium. Resilience can be regarded as a bio-psycho-social process rather than a trait or a characteristic of an individual. Sometimes it is even referred to as a post-traumatic growth or stealing effect due to triumph over circumstances. It is also defined as the maintenance of the positive attitude and adaptation despite an individual experience with significant adversity or traumatic experience. Some of the dimensions of resilience are cognitive, social or interpersonal, emotional and spiritual. So, there are 4 dimensions of resilience. These intertwine, unite, make up our state of mind and well-being and create an integrated system. The cognitive dimension would involve staying curious and trying to learn new skills in a way towards intellectual wellness, preventing causes of cognitive decline and promoting healthy aging. The interpersonal or social dimension would involve social bonds with others, binding us together, keeping us grounded and nourishing our well-being. It helps in creating a strong social network that we can fall back on when threatened. The emotional dimension would involve maintaining balance of our various emotions. That's very important as we are emotional beings with a wide range of emotions that affect us. When our emotions are not balanced, we do not function well. The spiritual dimension involves various values, ethics, and beliefs which affect our life, and being aware of these can help us practice more mindfulness, compassion, and reflection. The strategies in each dimension contribute significantly to the resilience demonstrated by an individual. The various strategies would involve in the cognitive domain, avoiding misinterpretation of crisis, making realistic goals, taking decisive actions, finding positive ways to reduce stress. In the interpersonal and social dimension, the strategies involve building connections, maintaining good interpersonal relationships, accepting help from others, being part of support groups. In the emotional dimension, the strategies are building emotional quotient, moderation of heightened emotionality, managing how we respond to fear, anger, frustration, etc. In the spiritual dimension, the strategies involve being part of faith-based groups, accepting change as natural, self-exploration, and accepting circumstances which can't be changed. Incidence of resilience. How commonly is resilience seen? Resilience is a commonly seen phenomenon due to the basic nature of human adaptation. Hence, it is called the ordinary magic by Maston. It therefore comprises an important and integral part of positive psychology. Resilience then can be regarded as a universal capacity wherein a person, community, group prevent, minimize, or overcome the damaging effects of adversity. Even the National Resilience Resource Center of the University of Minnesota has its basic belief that every individual has a capacity for successful transformation and change irrespective of his/her life circumstances. To be termed resilient, there are two criteria which need to be fulfilled. First, the judgment is about the individual doing well, and the second is about the circumstances being difficult. Looks at the historical development. Literature and art over centuries has depicted heroes and heroines possessing resilience. In the 19th and 20th century, as psychology began to emerge as a scientific study, there was a lot of interest in human adaptation. Human beings' capacity to triumph over adversity also started getting attention. Both the psychological and the physiological aspects of resilience were explored. The early studies focus on factors that make a person thrive in spite of adversity. The intrapersonal factors like optimism, belief systems, creativity, humor were thought to make life meaningful. Coping skills and strategies, memory, attractiveness, and the like are competencies that add to these factors. The environmental factors like life events, support systems, the feeling of having a connection with the world, and self also affect resilience. The concepts of ego, mastery, motivation, competence, self-efficacy attracted a lot of scientific inquiry. Then, as resilience as a concept has been investigated since the 1980s due to the studies in child psychiatry and developmental psychology. High-risk and vulnerable people were being studied, and that it was found that some cope and cope well, are able to overcome adversities. So, in a way, psychologists stumbled upon the concept of resilience while considering risk-reducing and well-being promoting measures for vulnerable populations. Attention is now being given to millennials too, as it was realized that they have unique challenges like parental pressure, cutthroat competition, parental divorces and separation, onslaught of killer diseases like cancer, AIDS, etc. The concept of resilience has emerged from the concept of psychological hardiness given by Suzanne Kozaba in 1979. It comprises of commitment, challenge, and control. Hardiness is synonymous with thriving, but embraces an individual's ability to make the best of difficult circumstances. There are three dimensions to hardiness as defined by Bonanno. The first one is being committed to finding meaningful purpose in life. The second is the belief that one can influence one's surroundings and outcomes and events. And the third is the belief that one can learn and grow from both positive and negative life circumstances. A definition that originated from existential personality states that the construct of hardiness refers to a constellation of personality characteristics that function as a resistance resource in the encounter with stressful life events. Florian, Milkunlinser, Tauber and Maddy have conducted studies. Because hardiness is a personality trait that helps buffer exposure to extreme stress, these individuals are able to appraise potentially stressful situations as less threatening and minimize distress. They are also more confident and better able to use coping and social support, said Bonanzo. If one looks at the cultural context, many community-based projects were carried out to see whether resilience could be developed, and it was seen that the strategies were more effective when the socio-cultural context was considered. The children and youth from vulnerable environments of the Western world got attention, but those from the economically underdeveloped and developing countries did not get scientific attention till much later. Today, there is a growing recognition of the importance of the influence of the culture on resilience and coping. Some cultures believe in faith, some give importance to problem solving in facing adversity, some focus on guilt, some on punishment, some others focus on discipline and reconciliation, some encourage dependence and some autonomy. Some give importance to strong parent-child bonds, while some believe in distancing them from childhood itself. It means to consciously make an effort to solve personal and impersonal problems to minimize stress and conflict. Coping tasks are the steps that one would take to reduce the negative effects of the problem faced in a systematic manner. Coping styles can be divided into three types. One would be problem-focused coping style, the second would be the appraisal-focused coping style, and the third would be the emotion-focused coping style. The problem-focused coping style is using solution-focused approach to deal with problems. It aims at reducing the impact of the stressor or eliminating it altogether. These are straightforward solutions to deal with most problems that control our life. For example, working on managing your time and appointments when you find yourself afraid of being late all the time. The appraisal-focused coping style would involve challenging one's own assumptions and reappraising them. We do not always respond to the environment rationally, often reacting to our interpretation of the event, which may be quite different from the reality. For example, a child who is resentful of a teacher's pet receiving better marks must focus on his or her relationship with the teacher. The emotion-focused coping style involves changing one's own emotional reaction by aiming to reduce the intensity of the emotion and thereby reducing the negative effects of stressors like going for a walk, distancing oneself from the problem. The coping strategies could be adaptive or maladaptive. For example, adaptive problem-solving methods would be to try to systematically solve the problem. Maladaptive emotion-focused coping would be to be in denial or try to avoid the circumstances. It can be seen that being optimistic is a positive style of coping. Studies were conducted to see the relationship between factors like resilience, optimism, and coping styles. In a study conducted on 100 pregnant women from the low symptomology, it was observed that greater levels of optimism and resilience were associated with lower levels of depression. Hope is the perception of an individual that his goals can be achieved. As defined by Snyder, it is something that has three necessary ingredients: goal-oriented thoughts, pathways to achievement, and agency thoughts. Being optimistic and hopeful is positively correlated to resilience. The theoretical basis of resilience. The theories, if we go to see the ecological theory, this theory gives importance to the individual factors in resilience. Its emphasis is on how the persons find strength in their environment to build internal and external resources needed to cope with the mitigating or difficult circumstances. Resiliency theory forms a framework for considering how promotive factors operate to encourage the youth development. It includes several models, basically telling us how promotive factors operate in opposition to the risk factors. Deals with resilience as a factor that neutralizes exposure to risk, so the effect will be the opposite of that of risk. Example, parental support compensates for the presence of violent adults, found Zimmerman. The protective factor model is again of two types. The first one is risk protective. A protective factor will reduce the risk. Example, mentoring will reduce the risk of stress on the mental health of a person. The protective factor will enhance the effect of another protective factor. Example, increasing the self-esteem will increase the negative interaction between cultural identity and alcohol use. The challenge model believes that exposure to a moderate amount of risk acts as an inoculation, but the level of risk is important. It has to be challenging enough, but it should not be overwhelming. Example, exposure to some interpersonal conflict will help in dealing with later social tensions. So according to this model, the risk exposures which could have made the individuals vulnerable to negative outcomes in fact help individuals develop coping mechanisms which come in use later. The various protective factors underlying resilience are some specific factors have been identified by researchers, and these factors will lead to increased chances of developing resilience. Some of the factors can be good intelligence, school achievement, emotional intelligence, self-esteem, hope, a sense of being lovable, unconditional love for someone, belief in God and morality, good communication and problem-solving skills, responsible risk-taking behavior, trusting relationships, interpersonal awareness, emotional support outside the family, ability to plan ego restriction, encouragement of autonomy, determination to be different, genetic makeup, the temperament, vulnerability to anxiety, challenges and unfamiliarity will determine his or her self-perception, interaction and reaction to adversity. A longitudinal study identified adolescent protective factors that were associated with resilient outcomes in people at risk for depression. Significant protective factors included family cohesion, positive self-appraisals, and good interpersonal relations. This was found by Carbonell in 2002. A study conducted recently investigated emotional intelligence and resilience. 63 public school principals and other professors were taken to examine the relationship between school leadership, emotional intelligence, and resilience as a topic that has been overlooked in the past and can be useful during recruitment, identification, development, and retention of the school leaders. A significant positive correlation was found between self-reported emotional intelligence and resilience. The relationship became stronger when school leadership was added to this model of significance, showing that it played an important relationship between emotional intelligence and resilience for the school teachers. A study conducted in 2007 by Simon, the relationships of resilience with trauma, cortisol attachment, temperament, and cognitive performance were tested. The defense style questionnaire, relationship questionnaire, the childhood trauma questionnaire, and the tridimensional personality questionnaire were administered on the participants, comprising of 25 women and 29 men. It was seen that resilience negatively correlated with childhood interpersonal trauma and harm avoidance, while it was positively correlated with cortisol, secure attachment, reward dependence, and superior performance. The childhood trauma was found to be the strongest predictor of resilience. Another study explored the relationship between self-esteem, hopelessness, and resilience among adolescents. The purpose of this study was to explore self-esteem and hopelessness as the predictor of resilience in adolescents. Almost 223 adolescent students were studied and 3 constructs were tested. It was seen that the relationship between self-esteem and resilience was positive, and a negative relationship between resilience and hopelessness. The findings showed that hopelessness and self-esteem are significant predictors of resilience by Kacker in 2011. Fostering of resilience. Resilience can be built if basic coping skills are taught and protective factors are instilled. working to learn problem solving skills, encouraging to have more satisfying and strong relationships, practicing mindfulness could be some of the ways to foster resilience. Increasing evidence suggests that attempts to foster resilience have been successful. Some success stories are the Penn State Resilience Building Program at Penn State University. It is an evidence-based program which has built resilience, well-being and optimism amongst people in all stratas of life, starting from primary school children to military personnel. The peer-based program at the National Resilience Resource Center at Minnesota University. At Minnesota, in the peer-based program, protective factors like access to positive role models, a safe space, knowledge of and access to help services, opportunities to learn and develop skills, peer support, shared experiences, and building a sense of attachment, belongingness were increased to promote personal resilience for the youth who are at risk. They believe in the natural strength and beauty of every human being. Bonanno and others felt that more research on factors that promote resilience is needed to foster resilience in both individuals and communities. Edith Grotberg's international study with 14 countries participating found every country draws on a common set of resilience factors to promote resilience in their children. And adults and older adults use more resilience promoting supports. Resilience is a deceptively simple construct. In fact, reviewers have confirmed its complexity and ambiguity. According to Fox Vernon, there is optimism and concern regarding resilience research, which is natural for any young and ambitious field of study, so the turbulence. He felt this bright start will unite different subdisciplines under its canopy. The importance of resilience is that resilience is being proposed as a sole index of the overall mental health of an individual by psychologists. With a wealth of research available, programmers and policymakers are increasingly proposing resilience building strategies to build mentally healthy individuals and communities. Resilience refers to the positive outcomes in the presence of adversity. It has 4 dimensions and each has strategies. The coping strategies impact the resilience shown by a person. The positive traits of coping like hardiness, optimism and hope affect resilience. Resilience is very significant as it may even be used as a sole indicator of mental health. Resilience can be fostered so we can create resilient individuals and societies. The application value of this topic is that the knowledge can be applied to build resilience among children and youth, ensuring better mental health of the next generation. Thank you.